Kelsey.
I'm Shay McGalley.
And I'm David Keener.
And this is the Hourlings podcast project. Tonight, the topic that we're going to be discussing is writing good henchmen. I think that we're going to start off by going around and finding out what people's definition of henchman is. Before the show, we were talking about, okay, what's the difference between henchmen and cannon fodder, and where's the line draw? And we'll probably, do the de facto definitions, all those things tonight, so everyone will know. So, Shay, how do you define a henchman?
I think a henchman is synonymous with like crony. When you're writing a plot and you're trying to get to the main bad guy, you got to get through the henchman. So you got to kill the lieutenants first, and that's how I view the henchman, like the obstacles to the main bad guy.
What about you, Dave?
My definition is similar. I think of henchmen as typically characters supporting a villain or the bad side or the antagonistic side in the story, who are important enough that they actually have names.
Right, names, lines, and I will add to that definition. I believe that henchmen actually help advance a plot of a story as well. Unlike cannon fodder. Cannon fodder is the guard at the door that gets wasted by, not drawing fast enough.
So basically,
but henchmen actually push the plot ahead some.
So basically, henchmen are when you get like a speaking part, and cannon fodder is when you get to play the tree, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Yeah.
Cannon fodder characters are more like, props than people.
Think stormtroopers or red shirts.
Right, red shirts, stormtroopers. Even though the stormtrooper may say, these are not the droids we're looking for. He's still cannon fodder because somebody shot him later in that episode. Must be. So that's how I would draw the line between those two. The next question I would put up: can you give me an example of one of your favorite henchmen in film, books, or TV? I guess I can go first because I wore this shirt because this is Brock Sampson, who's on the Venture Brothers. He's like one of my favorite henchmen, and as you can see on the shirt, he constantly kills everybody, which is always handy in a henchman.
Now, this brings up an interesting philosophical question to this henchman topic, though, because, under the definition that we just gave, I would say that, like, who's the new, I'm very embarrassed for forgetting his name right now, but Adam Driver plays him in the new Star Wars. What's this guy's name again?
Kylo Ren?
Isn't he technically a henchman then? Because he's Snoke's henchman? Or what do we think about that?
I think that he's the main character of that movie.
Okay.
Snoke.
But can henchmen be main characters?
I would say Snoke's is the mentor of the main character.
Can a henchman ever be a main character?
I think that in a lot of stories that have depth, henchmen are often main characters.
So there you go.
It depends. Depends on what you think of as a main character or secondary character.
It all depends on how fine you slice and dice.
Sure.
I mean, because I've written books that have 6 levels of character types, all of which have speaking parts and are named. Not all reach the level of henchmen or what I would call primary, secondary, or tertiary characters, but could still be henchmen. I also think that protagonists can have henchmen. Is there a word for a henchman for a good guy?
Sidekick.
Sidekick, yes.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of sidekicks for bad characters too.
Well, and I think there you start having a range where a henchman could exist on the perhaps highest level. He could be the sidekick of a villain.
Okay, I have a better example.
Ranging down from there.
I have a better example of Star Wars still. We'll go back to Star Wars for a sec. So like Grand Moff Tarkin and Vader. That's a relationship of classic henchman and main villain, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. He's not central, but he's definitely taking orders. He's a bad guy in himself, but he's part of a chain. I like it when stories happen where the henchman has an arc, and sometimes the henchman ends up betraying, the guy that he's loyal to, and that's interesting.
Well,
Yeah, and in fact, those are my favorite kind of henchman.
Yes.
A henchman that doesn't necessarily think that he's even the bad guy.
Right.
Who's got his own story, who's got his own goals and aspirations. Just having a henchman out there is just out there being the bad guy, just the, another gang member that just wants to kill people. That's, that just doesn't fly with me as much.
Whereas I kind of like somebody who perhaps the villain thinks that he's the good guy from his perspective, and his henchman isn't really a henchman. He's really the villain's sidekick, and they're doing what
Or support staff.
Right. And maybe only later does the henchman find out that his side in the war is doing something terrible and he's got to do something about it. The thing is that type of story is told from the hero's perspective, not necessarily the henchman.
Yeah, I gotta love a good henchman that has a realization and an epiphany and becomes the good guy and ends up giving his life for the right reasons. That's always a good arc for a henchman.
Are you saying the henchman always must die?
No. A really good story can have the henchman getting away.
There you go.
Yeah, nothing says that, henchmen always have to die or that they got to be defeated before they get to the big boss or whatever.
So cannon fodder, I'm thinking of like, what are the most common cannon fodders? Like I'm thinking guards. There's always a guard, you know what I mean? Like they're just called the guard. The guard swung his sword, but then I chopped his head off or whatever. What about zombies? Would you consider zombies cannon fodder?
Oh, they're totally cannon fodder. And in fact, in some of the movies I've seen, they were literally cannon fodder.
Although I have to actually say that there have been some zombie movies that actually use a particular zombie as perhaps he's harder to kill than the others, and he keeps coming back. And although he might not have a line other than right, you could think of him as an antagonist, maybe a henchman of some kind.
Yeah, I've seen several zombie flicks that have that twist.
Yeah, so I think that's another definition for cannon fodder. I think that's oftentimes a one and done type character.
When we were talking about this episode, my immediate thought of cannon fodder. Remember that scene in Deadpool where all these mercenaries are trying to get Deadpool, and he just knocks him off one bullet at a time, and he is counting how many bullets he has left, and gets two with one bullet and stuff. That's cannon fodder. While he's making jokes.
Your clue is if the character doesn't have a name, it's probably cannon fodder.
I feel like pirates are cannon fodder a lot. Also, literally.
Well, there's a lot of pirate stories, pirate movies where there's a lot of cannon fire pirates. All the guys that get swept over or grabbed by that giant octopus arm, or are killed with abandoned during a battle. Even in good pirate movies, there's always that scene of the cannon blowing up where the cannonball tearing through the ship, taking 6 guys out with it.
Yeah, the thing is that I think those scenes sort of exist to show you that perhaps being in a sail ship battle is dangerous, but at the same time, there's not much emotional involvement when the cannon fodder dies. But now you've established that the scene is dangerous, so now if you launch a main character or a secondary character, it suddenly has maybe emotional impact.
Yeah, peril. I mean, cannon fodder is often used as an example of what not to do. You know, the first guy through the minefield, or those poor guys in Indiana Jones that are trying to get to the Holy Grail, you know, losing their heads and stuff. Totally cannon fodder.
You know, there was an interesting discourse about cannon fodder in video games I read recently. Somebody posted on something like Reddit or some kind of social media feed about, you know, in video games, it's very common to just have your hero go through the realm and just kill the bandits like left and right, and you collect coins and like points and stuff, and you don't think about it. In fact, their bodies usually literally just disappear. Like, you know, after you kill them, they just kind of vanish into thin air. And somebody posted on Reddit some kind of philosophical musing about, you know, what are we really doing when we kill these NPCs? You know, what if you know, we never stop to think, like, you know, could they have had a backstory themselves? You know, could cannon fodder have people that care about them? You know, who was the mom that loved the person that blew up in the minefield that Marty's talking about?
Yeah, careful,
And,
Shay. You're about to write the screenplay for Free Guy.
Yeah,
Oh.
Free Guy. I was just going to mention
Well,
that. Which
okay,
is
well, no references yet. I haven't seen that. But someone responded and was actually kind of angry at this poster, and she said something like, you know, I play video games to just let loose and relax, and I really don't need more emotional labor to think about, you know, this bandit that I killed and did he have a family that loved him? Because if I start thinking about it, then I do get upset. So I guess I'm telling you this little story to kind of pose the question to you guys, like, is there a morality behind cannon fodder that authors should be aware of?
it depends on the story.
Okay.
I mean, I've read stories where, you know, cannon fodder, you know, in Aragon, he's riding on a dragon over a battlefield, and he just
Yeah.
uses his magic, and 10,000 guys keel over with, you know, brain embolisms. And you know, there's no moral implication for that as far as I'm concerned. And
sure.
there's nothing, there's no impact on the character that is doing it. Now, it would be very interesting to have a character that, you know, was really upset about all the people that he's has to kill to get a job done. That'd be a very interesting story.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. Go ahead, Dave.
And in fact, orcs make excellent cannon fodder.
Oh yeah.
Especially in movies like, you know, The Lord of the Rings, where you can kill an orc without having to think twice about it. Of course, they're evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking kind of about those examples that you brought up. And I think what matters is if the tone of the story from the start has a particular attention to death, such as the Hunger Games, which we've talked about before. I think the Hunger Games from the beginning had a very attentive approach to death and loss, particularly. And so every time, I mean, if I remember correctly, every time there was cannon fodder in Hunger Games, like they blew up a mountain full of soldiers, every time that happened, it was emotionally coped with. Like, it was emotionally thought of. Katniss would think about it and be like, oh man, I just, you know, did this, you know, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in stories like high fantasy, I think the focus is more like the quest and the values and not so much on death and loss. And so cannon fodder becomes a lot more like cannon fodder because their mind is very set on the quest. And I just think that's an interesting observation to make about the differences.
Yeah, it all depends on what kind of story you're writing. Really.
Exactly.
And I think there comes a point where cannon fodder, even though they're unnamed, unknown characters, if they carry some kind of gravitas that gives emotional weight to their demise. I can remember seeing, what was the name of that movie? It was a Civil War film about the Black Brigade. What was the name of that movie? Oh, shit.
I don't remember.
Recent?
I think I've seen it, but I don't remember.
Matthew Broderick was in it. Oh shit, can't remember the name of it. It's a great movie. Oh, I'm embarrassed.
The only one that's popping into mind is Gods and Generals, but I don't think that's it.
Yeah. Anyway, there was a lot of characters in that movie that die in horrible, you know, Civil War battles. You don't see their names. You know, in Saving Private Ryan on the beach scene,
yeah,
there's a lot of guys die in that scene. You know, hundreds of people. And I wouldn't call those guys cannon fodder. even though they were literal cannon fodder, because of
The
the
movie-
emotional impact that they carry.
The movie was Glory, thanks to the magic
Glory,
of
thanks.
internet.
That's it. Woo, that's good. Great movie. I love that movie.
I use cannon fodder, for the purpose.
You can do some other things.
Oh, sorry, Dave, you're cutting out. So I don't know if I'm interrupting you or you're interrupting me.
I'm not sure. We'll let you go, ladies.
Okay, you're next though. I use cannon fodder in my stories for the purpose of just having a cool fight scene, just like some action, mid-story on the way to the climax. But I'm wondering if you guys think that using cannon fodder as an obstacle is ever like lazy. Do you think that it could ever be misused or overused?
Oh, it has been. I mean, I have, read books and seen movies where, it's gratuitous cannon fodder that has no meaning except, slow the plot down so the two big bosses don't meet until the end.
So they can add 15 minutes to the movie for no reason.
Yeah, it's all depends on how well written it is. I mean, just throwing cannon fodder as an obstacle without advancing plot is bad. I just think it's lazy. And if it doesn't advance the plot, what good is it?
Well, it also lacks a certain suspense too. Like, oh man, this guy is going up against the equivalent of stormtroopers. Of course he's going to win. So there's no danger. There's no suspense. It's not until he hits the boss.
Yes, that's true.
Right. At least of that level where you start to realize, oh, he could be in danger, or maybe he might lose this battle, even if he doesn't die. So you have to be careful for that too.
Yeah, just write a story that doesn't suck is what it comes down to.
I think you can also use henchmen to like inject elements into your story. For instance, humor. If you guys remember The Princess Bride, I loved Andre the Giant in that. And, I do not think that means what you think it means. Inconceivable.
Yep. My name is Indigo Montoya.
Yes, exactly. I think your story may be told mostly from the hero's point of view, but it's nice. It's nice sometimes if you can show stuff from a henchman's point of view. So your hero could be about to walk into an ambush, but there's not too much suspense because you don't know there's an ambush coming. But then you switch to the POV of the henchman who's like, my master has told me to kill this guy. I shall do it with my 200 archers hidden in the woods, right? And you start seeing things from the other side, and now you have suspense because you don't know. Your hero is about to walk into an ambush. So I think you can use henchmen to show things that you might not otherwise be able to show in the story.
So in our writing, do you tend to use cannon fodder or henchmen more? I guess I'll go first. Just the book I was working on today. I have both henchmen and cannon fodder in this story. I am going out of my way to try to develop really three-dimensional henchmen and make it so that you either really hate them or really love them, or hope. I'm even trying to get it so that the reader might be rooting for a henchman to survive because they like them. And the cannon fodder I've got in there as well. Lots of named red shirt types that will meet creative demises in various ways. Shay, what about you?
Yeah, I use them both. I would say I probably use cannon fodder a little more because, like I said, I like the purpose of action scenes. When you have action and fight scenes with henchmen, I would say usually you have like one or two escapes of the henchman before he's actually killed. I don't know if I've come across any really good plot structure that has like, the first time you face off with the henchman, you kill him. Because then, hey, he's kind of pretty much cannon fodder at that point. So yeah, it's just a different kind of storytelling, and I tend to have my villains be a little less structured that way, like, with a chain of command, and a little more like Pixar villains, if you will, like, the mom who means well but isn't, but is overbearing, like in Turning Red, which is a great film, by the way. But stuff like that. So I'm a little less structured, so I don't think henchmen are as common in my stories, but yeah, I do like them. How about you, Dave?
I tend to use henchmen more than cannon fodder, but it
Okay.
varies a little bit depending on the type of story. Henchmen for most of my fantasies, which are more like character dramas, I tend to use cannon fodder a bit more in like military SF type stories, where you need some cannon fodder.
Right. Okay, so that sounds good. I always come back to write a story that doesn't suck, and part of that's making, three-dimensional henchmen or using your cannon fodder well, let's just say. Any other final notes from you guys?
Yeah, I mean, they're all tools in the toolbox, so use them well. But I will say that for henchmen, just because this character's occupation is henchman in your story, don't assume that all your labor of character building is then done because you know what his role is. Like Marty was saying, he's making an effort to do. Work on really making them have an arc and be more than just henchman, villain, neat little boxes. No one likes that. Be more creative than that.
I also think there's no reason why your henchman can't be interesting. I think it's maybe better for the story if he is. And if you write short fiction and novelettes and such the way I do, a good henchman is always potentially the star of your next novelette, just for the fun of it.
Cool. All right. Another great episode.
Readers,
thanks, guys.
And the viewers, I just have to let them know that my voice will be back next week. I'm recovering from a cold, but we did not have a cough attack, so I'm very happy.
We made it all the way through.
All the way through.
I was going to wait till after the show to mention it. But good job. Good job.
All right, buddy.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.